Hey friend, welcome back to the show. We are talking about credit cards. And it seems like people think that you can't use credit cards and be good with money. You might be surprised to learn that I, as a money coach, actually use credit cards for everything. Not using credit cards is a popular approach to money management, but it's not my approach. So I have 2 credit cards. Technically, I have 3 if you include my business card. But for my personal finances, I have 2 credit cards. So I have one that I use for joint/family expenses, and then another one that I use for just personal fun money type expenses. We put every single purchase on the credit card and then pay it off at the end of the month. And I started doing that back in law school. Like, part of why I got a credit card in the first place, like, I was traveling to visit different law schools to figure out where I wanted to go to school. And you know how, like, when you go to a hotel, they put that hold on your card for incidentals or whatever? I didn't like that they were putting a hold on my actual money. Like, I needed my money. And so I signed up for a credit card so that I could not have my money actually being held with those incidental purchases. And then I also like using credit cards because if there is ever some sort of fraud situation, somebody's making purchases like without your knowledge on your card was compromised, it's not your actual money being spent. Yes, the bank is going to refund you for any unauthorized purchases, but if you use a credit card, it's not affecting your actual money. So we keep it simple. So, like, we have our one joint card, and then we each have a separate card that we use for our personal expenses. I know that a lot of people do the travel hacking. They're able to, like, take a trip to Japan for like $20 or whatever. We don't do all that. More power to them for doing that. Point here is that there's nothing inherently wrong or bad with using credit cards. And there are actually some really good reasons to use them. I know that credit card companies had some questionable practices early on, like they were giving out credit like candy and, all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot more information available now, and there are more protections in place. And I think that credit cards are more useful than harmful. Credit cards are a tool. And just like any other tool, whether you have a good or bad experience with it depends on how you use it. For example, nobody would say that hammers are just bad. They're dangerous. Stay away from hammers, right? I can use a hammer to hang a painting, but I can also use a hammer to break somebody's window. And it's not that the hammer is bad, it's the way that I use it. If you use your credit cards as a supplement to your income, and you're buying things you can't afford, and you're having to pay like upwards of 30% interest and all that kind of stuff, now you're gonna have some problems. Like, that's how you run up credit card debt. So don't use your credit cards that way. Credit cards are not an extension of your income. Like, I almost think of my credit cards as an alternative way to access my income, right? It's not additional money that I have available. It's another way for me to spend the money that I make. Generally, I'm only buying things on credit cards when I have the money that I could actually pay for the item. Now, I have made some exceptions to that. I am willing to use my credit cards to invest in myself as long as I have a strategy for how I'm going to pay it off. So, for example, early on in my business, I joined a program that was all about mastering your coaching skills. So, like, they taught you how to be a better coach, how to handle your clients, how to handle different kinds of questions that may come up, and how to coach your clients better. The program was $10,000. The problem was I didn't have $10,000 in my business account. I didn't want to pull that kind of money out of our family savings. And so I decided to put that card on, or that program on, a credit card, because I was making like $2,000 or $3,000 a month in my business. And so I put that program on my fun money credit card, and I used the money from my business to pay it off over those following months. There have also been times where we have made big purchases for our household. So, for example, we got a new AC a year or 2 ago, and we put that on credit. We didn't want to take such a huge chunk out of our personal savings. Like, the AC was something like $20,000. And the company offered financing at 2%. And so we decided to do that so we weren't taking such a big hit to our savings. I know there was another situation where we did something similar. And I remember whatever it was, we put it on credit that month, right? So we bought it that month. We paid half off that same month that we bought it. And then we paid the other half the second month. But I can't think of what the specific situation was. But either way, the point being, you have a strategy for how you're going to pay off these purchases that you put on your credit card. Now, while you are in the transition period of getting on top of your finances, you are building up your savings, you're getting out of debt, like managing your spending better, all that kind of stuff. There might be situations that come up where you don't have the money available to pay for them. And it might be a situation where you need to put it on credit. I think that's okay, right? If that's the situation that you're in, that's what you're working with, it's okay, I think, for you to put it on a credit card. We just want to make sure that you don't stay in that situation for long. So we want to make sure that you're doing the things that we talk about each week on the show so that you don't find yourself in that situation often where you don't have the money for the things that you need and you're having to incur debt to cover them. I think it's also important to be clear on what constitutes an emergency, right? Let's say my car broke down, I got like $50 in my account, I don't get paid again until Friday. I think it's all right to use your credit card in that situation. That's the only means that you have to cover that situation. Again, we want to make sure that you're working on your finances so that you're not in that situation often. But if you're in that situation, I think it's okay. What's not an emergency? My favorite designer is having a sale and I only have $50 and I don't get paid again until Friday. That's not a situation that you're going to use your credit card for. That kind of quote unquote emergency is how people get caught up because you are using your money to buy something that you can't afford, that you don't necessarily need, and you're using credit to do it because you don't have actual money. We're not pulling out the credit card for a sale. They'll have another sale. Hopefully you'll be prepared next time a sale comes around. People get into trouble with that kind of thing because they tell themselves like, oh, I'll just do it this time and I'll make sure I pay it off. But then they don't pay it off and they do it again and again and they end up digging themselves further and further into debt. So use your credit cards wisely. Like generally only put things on your credit card when you have the money to pay it off, or when you have a concrete plan for how you're going to pay it off in a defined time period, like the situations that I told you about with my personal life. I also mentioned earlier that we will put everything on our credit card and then pay it off in full at the end of the month. I think if you're in credit card debt, you're actively working on paying off your credit card balances, I would not use that strategy. It gets kind of messy, like when you are actively working on paying off a card, but you're putting new charges on it, it gets hard where it's like, okay, I made this purchase, but then I made an extra payment, but then part of the extra payment went to pay off that purchase and it didn't really touch the original balance, right? Like it gets messy. It's not a clean way to do it. So I don't recommend doing that if you are working on paying off credit cards and you've got balances and stuff like that. But if you paid off your credit card, you are on top of your spending, you know how to make a plan for your spending and stick to it. You don't use your credit card to buy stuff that you can't afford and you're like, using it to supplement your income. If you are not in that situation, I don't think that there's any reason that you have to stop using a credit card. As I said before, credit cards are not inherently bad. You can manage your money well and still use credit cards. They are just another tool. And again, the experience that you have with that tool depends on how you use it. So those are my thoughts on credit cards. I hope that they are helpful for you as you navigate how you want to use yours. All right, that is it for this week's episode. Please take a second, subscribe to the show, leave a review. Both of those things help other lawyers find the show so they can get the help that they need with their finances. And as always, I appreciate your support. As we close out, friend, I pray that you take the information you learn here, apply it in your life, and open up to the realization that wealth is available to you. As you do that consistently, week after week, you'll continue to take steps to regain control of your time, build wealth, and live the life of freedom and choice you deserve.